Thank you. No, you know me, I'm just a big old nerd. So the last time I did a Dogman episode, or even really talked about Dogman, was with Vic Cundiff. So it was about time I had somebody else on to talk a little bit about Dogman.
Awesome. Well, it sounds like I'll be in good company.
Well, I was looking at your channel, and that thing is chock full of some really cool stuff.
I sincerely appreciate that. I work pretty hard to, keep fresh content up and keep a variety of content up as well.
Yeah, and let's let everybody know the name of the channel is Bigfoot Dogman Research Project. And what you told me, Dee, was that you actually, you quit school and work and pursued your research full time. I personally think that's really cool that you did that.
Thank you very much. It's something. I had an experience down in that, the Brown Springs area in southern Oklahoma. I was actually shooting footage for a Halloween contest. It's a really thick, primitive, old-growth forest, and I was being tailed. I was in there maybe a mile. I was on my way out. I ended up getting lost, and I noticed something was tracking me. And, closer it got, I noticed it was on two legs. Mm. And I gave out a whistle. This whole area has been mired in ghost stories. In the 1920s, there was a report of the man dog of the area. And, Sasquatch. I didn't know about the Sasquatch activity until after the fact, but I followed the whole field, pretty closely. Mm-hmm. So I whistled for whatever reason. I whistled some tune and it actually came back to me. And, as this thing was whistling, it made like blowing raspberries, like a little kid would, I don't even know how to describe it, blow spit bubbles or something. It was whistling and doing that at the same time. So, somehow I managed to get out of there without having an anxiety attack. And I think I went back 2 more times before I decided to pursue it full time, because there's not been any time I've gone down there without seeing or hearing something. And of course, as it grew, I started going to other locations and right on the Red River and encouraged the same type of activity.
And that is Brown Springs, Oklahoma. And you're actually in Texas, but I looked at where you're at, and you're not too far from the Oklahoma border, so it's easy for you to probably get over there to Brown Springs. Okay.
Absolutely.
Very cool.
I'm just right across the river.
So those auditory experiences were enough for you to go ahead and do this full time?
Yes, ma'am, they were. The third time I think it was is when I actually had a brief sighting. About 40 yards away in the brush. It was a quick flash of fur, but it was way too large. We have a hog epidemic in North Texas and southern Oklahoma, but this was way too big to be any kind of a hog or anything like that. So after that, I was like, yeah, there's something going on down here. And I was taking criminal justice. I've always had this investigative mind. Mm-hmm. I have a degree in investigative journalism, so it's just my natural curiosity got the better of me, and I had to get all that important stuff like school and career. I had to set that aside to pursue these elusive creatures out here in the woods.
Oh, well, they must have made a big impression on you then.
It's been I don't even know how to describe it. It's been the most fulfilling thing I've probably ever done.
Now, that thing that you saw 40 yards away, do you think it was a Bigfoot or one of the Dogman creatures?
I think it was a Bigfoot in this area. First time I've seen in anything, Dogman from my area was I put out a video and someone actually pulled it out of the footage. I didn't even see it. I didn't see it with the naked eye or when I reviewed the footage myself. And, kind of scared me there for a minute. That was the first time I didn't go every single day that week that
Yeah. Okay, I have to ask. I just made notes on this because I watched one of those videos that you sent to me that you said were your favorites. Was this the very first image from the Brown Springs, Oklahoma Dogman and Bigfoot video? It was like the very first still in there?
Yes, ma'am.
That caught my eye too. I was like, what the hell is that?
Yeah, it was actually like chewing on something and watching me as I was going through, and I zoomed in on it And because I thought it was a tree stump.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people say that was a Bigfoot with a snout. A lot of people say that was Dogman, but both are down there. And it was no more than 25 yards away, 30 at the most.
So you did, though, hear something, and that's why you zoomed into the area with your camera.
I was actually like just panning the entire area, and I saw that, and I said, wow, that tree trunk looked like it has a face.
Okay. But you're just thinking, oh, maybe it's pareidolia or whatever.
Right, I don't believe in pareidolia.
No?
No, usually, when I was review other people's work, I don't get to now. It's crazy busy with the channel, but, when I review other people's work, I'd look down the comments and say, oh, well, that's just pareidolia, when it would actually be something. It's not, shapes in the bushes that make a smiley face or anything like that, but I don't know what I was thinking. I thought maybe that was what I was looking at, there in person.
Mm-hmm.
But when I zoomed in on it, I saw the mouth moving, and then I saw its eyes, like staring at me intently. And you can see in that little piece of footage, like how I kind of panned left really fast.
Right.
I actually when I focused in on it and realized what I was looking at, I pointed right next to it and started talking to myself and just kept going. I didn't want it to, know that I saw it, I guess.
Saw it, yeah.
Right.
See, that's actually a pretty cool reaction, because and I can hear the listeners going, oh, come on, you thought it was right there and you had a camera and you kept going. But honestly, would they have stood there and kept the camera pointed on something that they thought could rip them up? I mean, if they really thought that's what was right there. Because you're there by yourself, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And, I hike in for a great number of miles sometimes, and that was one of those days. So I know these are naturally elusive creatures. And maybe it's just my frame of thinking, but I think that since they're so naturally elusive, that one being practically right out there in the open could have meant a great number of things. Could have been an intimidation tactic, or I really didn't want it to be aware that I was aware of its presence.
Right.
I think it would have ended up possibly not being a good situation. And that's what I tell people: don't ever stare, don't ever point, stuff like that.
Right. Well, when you look at the reports of Dogman, they're not exactly the friendliest creatures. If it was just, if you happen to come upon it and it was having a meal or something, you certainly probably wouldn't want to piss it off.
No, ma'am. And
I'm sorry, was this in your area or this was in Brown Springs?
No, yes, this was in, what it is, it's a wildlife management area. And us Okies call that entire strip of forest Brown Springs, because it leads from Brown Springs Road. So in this wildlife area, which turns into just state land after, I think, 6 miles, and I've probably gone like 16 through those woods, like as the crow flies, just straight through. So
right.
Yes, it was in there.
And how heavily wooded is the entire area? Is it slightly wooded and then very brushy?
No, it's very, very thick, old growth primitive forest from where you park your vehicle to as far as the eye can see. As you go deeper in, it gets a little bit thicker with the underbrush and everything. There's some places you have to almost crawl to go forward.
See, and that's tricky because that's how Ohio was, and you probably know about my whistle, my auditory experience, and that shook me to my core, and I didn't have to see the thing.
Yes, ma'am.
It does. It really gets you when you can't readily explain it away. So, do you camp out there overnight? Are you allowed to do such a thing on that land?
Sure. It's being in a wildlife management areas, as long as you follow the guidelines of the area, you're fine. They allow camping. Me doing my quote unquote nature photography, they don't bother me.
Yeah.
Some of them may think, I've talked to the actual wildlife manager himself who runs the entire area on several different occasions. And, I'm just some crazy guy that thinks there's Bigfoot and Dogman in there.
So what does he say? I mean, has he come up to you and you've just said, yes, here's what I'm here for? Has he come out with any hints that he's seen anything?
No, not at all, actually. The area was donated, by the local tribe to the state to turn into a wildlife management area. It used to be a part of the Chickasaw Nation. It was their land. And, the actual Brown Springs Cemetery, which I think, one of the BFRO or somebody has, a sighting. It's the only sighting, quote unquote, in the area. But, that's a little bit further away from the actual place where I go. He said he heard about that one, but since that's old, native land, the Light Horse Police, who are, part of the, BIA, the Bureau of Indian Investigations or whatever, they help police that land. And I've talked to a couple of them as well as, some of the sheriff's deputies who help them police the land. And I've asked them, have they ever seen anything odd or heard anything out of the way? It's the same thing. It's the stories that have been around the area for 100 years. Some people say they hear birds that sound way too loud. Mm-hmm. None of them said they've seen anything though, except ghosts. A few of them seen, ghosts walking back and forth across this old dirt road.
Yeah, we'll have to cover that a little bit because I watched your video on Brown Springs, and boy, there's a lot going on out there, isn't there?
Yes, ma'am.
That is a busy spot. So, do you yourself camp out there overnight?
I'm sorry, I've only done it one time. Since I've been doing this about 10 months now, and after a while I stopped going day in, day out, and I went one time by myself at night, and I don't know if I look at them as natural creatures. I've never seen anything go through portals or anything like that, and maybe they've almost, at the very most, they've got some sort of affinity for me. And this, like I said, it's mostly Sasquatch that I've seen and that I'm pulling out of the footage. So they don't really move away as much as they used to. So I stopped really going in there at night because it becomes rather daunting. You know, these creatures are big and they are to be taken seriously. And as I said, I think that they're wild creatures, no matter the level of trust that they have for me. I mean, I've walked right up to their nest with the adolescents inside, so they don't feel any sort of threat from me. But recently, actually, a gentleman, call him Yeti Spook, he came down from Colorado, and he actually went through the area with me over the course of 3 days, and we camped out partially overnight. And they were just right there, about 15 yards away from us on the other side of the brush.
And they stayed there the entire time that you guys were there? Did you hear movement, or did you actually, well, you said you really just had the non-visual, but so did he get to see anything while he was there?
I don't think he saw anything. Through the course of that 10 months, I've had lots of visuals, actually. I don't know what the class would be. Class A sightings where I'm looking right at them. But that night we didn't see anything except flashes of fur. But the most unmistakable thing is the whistle that I did the very first time I've had any kind of occurrence in there. I started doing that whistle every time I would go to the area. And he actually got to hear that without me eliciting it, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
So they intimated your whistle to you before you did it first to them?
Yes, ma'am.
And what does that whistle sound like?
It is the theme song from My Three Sons.
No kidding.
I don't know why I chose that, but ever since I heard that back at me, every time I go to the area without fail, it's almost how I announce myself.
How many notes do they do of that song?
They're mockingbirds. They do the whole thing that I do. You know, I don't sit there and whistle the entire thing, but 5-6 seconds. And where we were, I mean, there was this big bramble bush, and it was over our heads, and I mean, you could feel it like it was coming down at us. It was the most thrilling and exhilarating thing I've ever experienced. It was nuts. And I don't go in at night because them being so naturally elusive, I look at it as sort of a respect thing, not so much fear. At night, they get to move around a little bit more freely than they would during the day. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I don't want to disrupt whatever they have going too much. So, when we went in there, everything that they would normally do comes to a grinding halt so they can pay attention to us and what we're doing. You know, I always, in the back of my mind, sort of worried about that. You know what I mean? Especially with the free nature that they let me roam through that entire branch of forest. But yeah, they were pretty excited, I'd say. So we backed up after that. We were going to fry bacon to see if we can get them to come in a little bit closer, maybe get some pictures. But, I haven't released that footage yet because there was so much of it over the course of those 3 days. But we got some pretty good visuals. Better than I thought they would be, being middle of the night, almost a canopy over the entire part of the woods we were in.
So can you describe these things a little bit for us?
Absolutely. And this is why I reach out to other researchers, because what I've incurred in there is pretty odd. That some look like straight gorillas with the exaggerated anatomy of a human, if that makes any sense. The proportions of the head, a lot of them don't have the atypical conical head that you'd see, in other footage or in, character depictions or witness descriptions. Some of them look just like ghastly, over-exaggerated caricatures of humans.
Mm.
And, their mouths is what gets me. The first and only eye-to-eye sighting I've had was with, what I call the alpha female. Her head was as big as a coffee table. And, what caught my eyes, I thought it was a bush. And, it had this glisten from her black eyes. And she slowly turned around and looked at me, and there was no real fear. I didn't feel intimidated at all. I mean, I may have caught her off guard. I don't know. I doubt it, because they're masters of their own terrain. But she just stared at me.
And how close was she?
15, 20 yards on the other side I was in a part of this dry, riverbed, and she was on the other side where the hill goes up and then slopes back down.
So you guys were that close to a nest, and you say was there one or two adolescents in there?
There was tons of adolescents. It looks like they were piled on top of each other.
And they let you guys get quite close?
The first time, I think it was in that piece of footage you were talking about, where it's kind of like, all the good stuff, I guess, that I've got so far at that point. That one was the first time. The second time, it was just myself and my fiance. And, I walked straight up to the nest, saw the eye shine. The sun was at my back, and I could see it blinking. It was looking right at me, so I just snapped a few pictures really fast and kept walking.
But do you think that because you've gone in there day after day, nearly almost every day at some points during the day, and let them see you and get to know you, and you do the same whistle, that's why you are allowed to get so close to them? Absolutely.
No doubt whatsoever. If I had not made my presence known in that area to the point of near harassment, I got a bluff charge one time.
And describe that. How did that go?
It was the same day that I saw the alpha female. As I said, I was walking in this dry riverbed. It was filled with trees, and the area is flooded a few times. So those lower parts of that valley in this river bottom, it piles up with brush, and it's really thick. So on the other side of that hill, there was a lot of movement, a lot of activity going on. I could hear this thing working itself up. It was, and it would like do these monkey sounding like, deep guttural whoops. And, there's bushes all along that whole ridge line. And like lightning on all fours, it ran through this brush right up to me within 4 feet. I was looking down right into its eyes, and as fast as it ran at me, it stopped and let out this big, deep, breath. How lions, when it almost sounds like a purr. Mm-hmm. Like it's an internal growl. It did that, and it pushed itself back up that hill with a ridiculous amount of speed. And yeah, I stood there for a minute, everything got quiet. All the movement that I was hearing before went away. And, that's when I looked over, and this black bush, I saw the side of her eyes, and her eyes were completely black. There was no iris, no pupil. It was just all black. And the glisten coming off of that is what caught my eye. But yeah, that was pretty scary. I won't lie.
Do you think that was your scariest incident? You marked that down as the one?
Yeah. Well, I did see, this was just a few weeks ago. I saw a Dogman once. When I got that bluff charge, this was at the very beginning of me going in the area, day in, day out. After that, though, I mean, I felt comfortable. That heavy atmosphere that comes along, with being in close proximity to these things, that's how I would track them. So, and I never really felt, as frightful as it was in that moment, even looking at that ugly thing in the face, I didn't feel like my life was threatened. That's the only reason I didn't move an inch.
How close did I get to you, Dee?
Within 4 feet.
Oh my God. Within 4 feet?
Yeah, I was with a foot and a half away from that brush, like where it goes over the hill. Mm-hmm. And it ran right there. It didn't come out of that, thicket. But yeah, it was within 4 feet.
So it's mostly still covered in the brush, but you can see it clear enough to know.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It's the one I call the teenager. It always seems to, I don't know if I ever have any problems in there, it would be with that one.
Yeah, you think it's a teenager?
Personally, I believe so. It just judging by the size, I'm not sure. I just have a feeling it's a teenager. It seems like it wants to push its boundaries, so to speak, because there's quite a few of those creatures in there, and I've never, before or after, had any of them do anything like that.
Yeah, I guess they're like, well, we showed Dee what's up. He'll be fine now. Not that you were sounding ever disrespectful to them, but it looks like they were just testing you out.
Absolutely, and I had an older researcher tell me it may have been a test for the both of us.
Interesting. Yeah, didn't think of it that way.
I didn't either until it was pointed out to me, especially me thinking it's older adolescent. It kind of makes sense.
He got hazed a little bit that day. They're like, all right, buddy, let's see what you got.
Yeah, pretty much. Like, there's one of them. See what you
yeah. We'll see how close you get. So as far as that area, how many people usually trek through those woods and camp or hike or whatever the situation may be?
None whatsoever.
Oh, really?
Yeah, in the 10 months I think it's been since I've been going in there, I've probably seen 3-4 people.
So I guess because it is a quote-unquote wilderness preserve or area, it's not like there's hiking trails or campsites in here.
No, ma'am. It looks like they just put that sign up right at a primitive forest.
Right.
Yeah,
so
it's
if you're
really
getting
old,
in there, you're like having to bushwhack and you got to wear pants because the thorns are grabbing you, kind of a deal.
Absolutely.
Okay, I gotcha. Yeah, because I was wondering, I jotted down, you mentioned the BFRO had only one report from the area, and I was wondering why, if it's it seems like a beautiful place, but that makes more sense, because if Salt Fork was like that and they had no roads or trails, it would be a tough go in there. Almost impossible. Like, it wouldn't be a place where people would go, hey, let's go for a walk in Salt Fork. It wouldn't be like that. So, that makes sense. Okay, so let's go to the Dogman sighting. If you could kind of walk us through that one and what it looked like and what you were doing.
It was a new area, but it was on the river, not too far away from where I usually go down at Brown Springs. At Brown Springs, and especially this place, I do what I call a slow approach. I wouldn't just go and, start brambling through, and for the first few days I'd sit in my vehicle and I wouldn't go any further than 100 yards within this, and it's right on the river, just like Brown Springs, as I said. I'd been going maybe 3 weeks, and I was tackling it pretty hard like I did at the very beginning down there at that wildlife management area. But I was sitting in my vehicle. It was nighttime, and I think that was pretty stupid of me to go at night, not knowing the area entirely well. But there's this narrow road, and it opens up a little bit before you go into this deep pocket of forest. And that's where I would park. It's the only place you could park. And I sat there. Yeah, the moon was actually out. It was fairly bright. And I guess it would be to my east was an open field with a fairly thick line of trees in between where I was and, the open field itself. And the reason I picked this place is because I thought maybe it was the same troop or tribe or pod of Sasquatch. Seeing as how it's within 20 to 30 miles of where I started. Anyways, I'm parking there. I light up a cigarette. I get about halfway through it, and just this negative, nasty, dreadful feeling comes over me. You know, I didn't hear anything at first, and I'd say within at least within a minute, I hear something approaching from that open field. And this is an open field that's surrounded on three sides, like by the deeper parts of the woods. Mm-hmm. There's something similar to that where I usually go. Anyways, I heard this thing coming up, and it's something on all fours, so I didn't panic at first, but like I said, I didn't see or hear anything, and then I just got this overwhelming sense of dread. And it comes through this tree line. I see its eyes glowing, and it's not Dogman's eye shine or whatever. It's not like a Sasquatch's. Sasquatch just looks like a normal animal on a bigger scale, you know, as far as eye shine, in my opinion. It was this strange, flaky, almost like a fly, multiple points of light, I guess reflecting from the lens in its eye. I don't know. Mm-hmm. But when it broke that, and it wasn't sprinting, you know, it was walking fairly slow. The closer it would get, before I even saw the eye shine, you would hear this sound like a muted popcorn machine. It was weird. But inside the tree line, before it broke through, it stood up on its hind legs, and I could hear its bones shifting or something. I don't know. If you sit down for a long time and you give yourself a big stretch, it was like that times 10. Mm-hmm. And this was, I don't know how far away, 2 to 3 car lengths away, possibly. And yeah, when it broke through the woods, it was standing on its hind legs. And I saw an alpha male Sasquatch is what I call it. And that's the most terrifying thing I think I've seen since I've been doing this. It was just massive. This thing's something different. You know, that was the first time I saw one with the naked eye. And the only reason I call it a Dogman is because it fit in some way what I've heard of before. Miss LaGirl, this thing, I mean, it just looked, it's not a hominid. These things it looked unnatural. I'll put it that way. It was skinny, but it was like, I could see abs. Mm-hmm. It didn't have like a thick, woolly coat. And I mean, I don't know. It was terrifying. It's crazy to even think about. Like, I almost gave it all up, honestly. I understand after this incident, if it wanted to do something to me, I'd have no choice. I mean, like, I couldn't do anything. Anyways, I look at this thing up and down. I start at his feet, and for whatever reason, I looked at his face and his mouth. It was wide. It had a snout. Like, I can't tell how long it was facing me, but I can tell it protruded, you know, from its head. But its teeth, like, it didn't open its mouth at first, but it looked like it couldn't close its mouth if it wanted to. Mm. That's how the teeth were. You know what I mean? Like, mm-hmm. I don't know anything else compared to. It just looked like it either had too many or they were massive.
Yeah, your voice has changed since you started talking about this one. I can tell this one bothers you.
I apologize.
No, that's okay. Yeah, I get the same way when I talk about certain things.
I thought I had a firm grasp on, you know, what I was doing.
So did you see I forget what it's called now, how embarrassing, the backwards dog leg that they're supposed to have?
Yes, ma'am. There was something, like I said, it was facing forward, but,
right.
I talked to someone who's had multiple experiences with these things, and from what he tells me, the popping noise I heard was its bones. I guess it's dislocating its legs or something so it can stand like it was. Mm. I don't know.
That's even more horrifying if that's the case. My gosh. So
there's a weird atmosphere, and like I said, with the Squatch, it seems like they have it too. But it was before I saw that thing, like it just felt terrible.
And so, how do you think they do that? Do you think that's just our primal instincts kicking in because it happened before you saw it? What do you think that is?
I'm not sure, honestly. Like with the Sasquatch, even You know, as normally as I went into my main area, I'd still proceed with a lot of caution. I give them a wide berth. That feeling was still there. I mean, even though my mind and my heart don't fear these things, the Sasquatch, I mean, my body still feels that I'm in the presence of an apex predator.
Right.
I mean, there's no doubt about that, but it was different with this.
So was it
canine creature.
Was it skinny at the bottom and then it like tapered up to wider shoulders, or was it skinny all the way up, like scraggly but muscly at the same time, all the way up?
It looked like there was more fur through its from its waist down. Mm-hmm. But as it went up, and like I said, it was nighttime. It was bright, but I mean, it was still night.
Right.
I saw it better than I would like to have, though.
Yeah.
Michael Phelps is the only thing I can think of that this human being that's
okay.
Seems like his torso was way too long.
Right. What about the face? Are we talking like Michael Jackson's Thriller? Like after he changes, did you get a good look at the face at all? I mean, he saw the mouth enough to not close. Yeah.
I don't know what to compare it to. Honestly, the way it looked, that's why I say it had to be a Dogman just from the descriptions, but it doesn't necessarily look canine-esque, I guess. It had some feline type qualities to it. It had the ears on top of his head pointing up. It was tan or maybe gray. It wasn't black. And even the ones in the area that I frequent, I think I may have sometimes been looking at one of these and thinking they're a Sasquatch, after the fact. But this thing was something different. Anyways, it opened its mouth a little bit. And like I said, its teeth were they were sticking out of its mouth. I don't think it could close its lips or whatever it has over its teeth. Mm-hmm. It opened its mouth a little bit and made this weird dog sounding noise like, the noise it made was familiar. I'm a dog lover actually, and if you're gone for all day and your dog after it gets excited and jumping on you and stuff, it'll sit at your feet and make this like exhale, this comfortable type. It did that, and then it like put one foot backwards, and then it pivoted and turned around and like dropped back down, and the nasty bone sound, and it as casually as it walked up, it walked off.
On all fours.
Yes, ma'am. On all. Yeah, but these things aren't hominids. These things are not some sort of divergence of a dire wolf or anything else I've heard of. That one wasn't, at least.
Do you buy into the fact that it's just another type of a Bigfoot, or you think this is something altogether different?
No, ma'am. This was no subspecies of Sasquatch. It was no, a werewolf is the only thing I can call it. I'm not even sure I can say it was a dog, man. It just, I still to this day don't understand, like, why would it come through that tree line? It could have watched me and all I saw was the eye shine. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? There was a reason for it. I mean.
Do you think maybe the cigarette smoke, it smelled it and it pissed it off?
I'm certain I have no idea. I don't think so because, I'm sure if there is a Dogman, which obviously there is in the area that I usually go to, they're far outnumbered by the Sasquatch. And I think the Sasquatch are the ones that have an affinity for me, maybe. In that, the eye shine I told you I got in that nest. People that know that creature a little bit better than me say it is actually a dog. It's the eye shine of a Dogman. And after, I got over this little incident, so to speak, I look back at that and that's dead on what I saw. Mm-hmm. As far as the way the eyes were glowing and the weird flaky. But no, ma'am, I don't think that these things are anything like a Sasquatch or any other natural creature. What I saw was extremely unnatural.
So what do you think the dynamic is? You mentioned that the Sasquatch outnumbered the Dogman. So you think the Sasquatch are in charge out there, and the Dogman are they tiptoeing around it for territory?
Well, in the footage that the subscriber to the channel, like he pulled it out, and there was Sasquatch in the same frame. I think.
Oh, with the Dogman.
Right. In this new area, I don't think I've filmed maybe once. I don't know if I even got anything in it. I haven't looked at the footage. But, in my old area, I think it's sort of like the hippos and the crocodiles in South Africa. When the water's low.
Right.
I'm sure you've seen the Discovery Channel. They swim on top of each other.
Yeah, they just have to share. There's no other choice.
Exactly. they're both top tier apex predators, and I don't think that they would want to exert the energy battling each other that they would need to find food. It would make no sense. I think, in my area, that's pretty much what the case is. That and the Sasquatch far outnumber these dogmen things. But even, like I said, even with what I've seen in the footage that somebody else had to point out to me, which is kind of shameful. But anyways, that thing didn't look anything like what I saw that night.
That thing from the very first still in that video that
Right.
I mentioned? Okay.
Yes, ma'am. This one had a longer snout. Have you ever seen Van Helsing?
Yes.
That's the only thing I can compare it to, the exaggerated long snout.
Yeah, wow.
It
No
didn't look
wonder
exactly
you almost
like
gave
that.
it up.
Yeah, I'd been comfortable up to that point, but people were actually calling me, and they still do. They call me to their property to assess the situation they're in, if they have structures or activity and whatnot. I think I'm fairly savvy with the Sasquatch creature, but that incident kind of gave me a little, because I've given up. I've given up a lot of what I did know, but I've gained a lot more in a lot of different ways. But I'd be comfortable going back to school to, get a bachelor's degree, to go work in some law office at a desk before I ever even thought about seeing one of those things again.
Yeah. Yeah, okay, so let's go back to that night. It goes back in the brush. You're sitting in your truck going, oh shit. And now what do you do? Do you leave immediately?
I actually sat there for maybe a couple of minutes, and I drove to this convenience store. I drove to this convenience store, and I tried to call my fiance, but I couldn't bring myself to do it. Like I had like a mild panic attack, to say the very least. Because this is in a rural area, but like I said, it's not too far away from where I normally go, and the world's largest casino, believe it or not, is within 7 miles of the entrance of my main area.
Within 7 miles of where you saw that creature?
No, not that creature.
Okay.
It's within actually like probably 20 miles though.
Still pretty close. Wouldn't be much for that guy.
Right, but I don't think that they want anything to do with us, any of these creatures. That's why they stay in these. But I went to the convenience store by that giant casino, and I sat there, and I had a panic attack. And I didn't come home for probably 6 hours. I drove around until the truck was on E, replaying it in my mind, because I like figuring things out. Like I said, I have a naturally investigative mind, I guess. But this thing's not natural. There was a lot of things not right with it. Like, how can it stand straight up if it has the hind legs of a dog? What was with the popping noise? Why does its eye shine look like that? I mean, why is it so tall and thin and gaunt looking but muscular? What in nature, or no matter what anybody's religion is, what would create something that its mouth is so full of teeth?
Right.
That it couldn't close its mouth. It can't close it all the way. So, I mean, like I said, there was this young lady who, actually lives in my town, who, had some occurrences on her property. She thought it was a dog, man. From what I've seen, I went out and talked to her a few times, and I walked the property line, and, I don't think it was a dog. There's no way. But again, I don't know. I know there's different classifications. And I've seen the pictures of the classifications. I actually went back just the day before yesterday and looked at them, and what I saw didn't necessarily fit any of those. In a way, it looked like the I wish I had it in front of me. No, these things are. I don't like spreading fear. I'm not a fearmonger or anything like that. As a matter of fact, the reason I go religiously and I keep doing the infield investigations is because I want a better understanding of these creatures, so I can pass that knowledge on to people who were like me, who do want to get involved in it, and try to give them the information to do it as safe and as incident free as possible, I guess. But yeah, that thing threw a real big stick in the spokes.
Because Dee, on your channel, Bigfoot Dogman Research Project, you cover other things. You cover CERN, you cover haunted locations, which Brown Springs has its own tale of haunting. So,
yes, ma'am.
When we're talking about a dogman, are you having trouble putting it in that it's 100% of this earth and natural box? Or, I mean, is that not at all what you're thinking about this thing?
Actually, I mean, that's pretty much it. Yeah. I can't, like before, you know, looking at other people's footage that they would send me or their pictures, looking at the thing, you know, in that fashion, it's got hair. It lives in a natural environment. You would say, okay, this is a natural creature, a divergence of this or that. A lot of people, logical, you know, straightforward thinking people say that it would have to be some sort of subspecies of the direwolf, which you know, for a while I could get behind that theory. But just the whole feeling of dread I had and the sickness, I mean, I'm not a big, you know, a big softie or whatever, obviously. But yeah, I'm not gonna lie to you, like I wept like a kid when I went to that convenience store.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was just, it was the most terrible feeling I ever had. And, you know, after I got my stuff together and I started thinking about it, like, why did it carry an atmosphere of dread with it? So,
well, and see, and these are things that you go out looking for, and you got
absolutely.
it, right? And
sure.
You're going, nope, I don't ever want to see that again. And you still say that to this day, right? Like, once was enough.
Honestly, if it, all I can say is there's something different, but I don't know if the different types of dogmen have different. I'm not even sure that was a dogman. I say werewolf, but I try to steer away from that word and be logical and reasonable about it. But there's no reason why I should carry that terrible before I even see anything or hear anything.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it was casual. I was trying to open my senses to actually hear things approaching. There's no reason for not just seeing the creature and how abnormal it looks, but everything else that came along with it.
Right.
But yeah, on the channel, you know, I talk to a lot of people, and it always goes in different directions. And I added the non-cryptid weirdness portion just so, I mean, I have an interest in a lot of different things. And, you know, CERN, it's weird in and of itself. But, yeah, I've been thinking a lot about that, like the different types, and maybe this thing is unnatural, or, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Just
I don't want to say demonic.
Two different worlds or something. Yeah.
Right.
No, I totally get you. It's a good point that you made. You're like, why did it even step out of the brush? What was the point of that? Why even do that? It sounds like you, Dee. I always joke, I'm like, I wish GoPro would sponsor me. I think they need to sponsor you. I mean, you're out in the field. And
that'd be phenomenal.
I wonder, though, you know, because we always hear about all these folks with trail cams out, and even people that are just hunters, that are not even Bigfoot researchers. Why in the hell can't we catch one on a decent trail cam, right? Or, I mean, even though that would still be hotly debated, but that's another subject. But I wonder if you had some kind of a badass, like, night vision camera or a video camera on top of your truck, would it have still stepped out? Or would it have gone, oh, can't do that right now? Or he knew, you know, oh, he's sitting here resting, having a cigarette, you know, like you said, getting ready for the night. And he's like, I'm just going to mess with him. I mean, I wonder what it was thinking.
Quite possibly. I mean, you know, I'd been in the area just a few times beforehand, and and I had an idea that, you know, with the close proximity it was to my area and how big these creatures are and how much land they could cover as opposed to us, maybe, you know, it's the same troop. I was trying to expand my knowledge of just that area in itself. And, you know, there's a lot of people who research glorify campers and hikers. You know, I don't put any kind of vast importance on it. You know, I have 4 notebooks, like I told you, full of like data and stuff from topography to the weather that day. And, I asked myself one day, who am I going to give this to? You know, like what branch of the scientific department of the government or whatever else, what university is going to take this and how is it going to further their knowledge or anything? So, yeah, I mean, seeing that made me question a lot, but like I said, this is still the most fulfilling thing I've ever done. It's a real life adventure. It's the unknown. I want to bring people the truth of this world. It baffles me that there are still people, even beforehand, it baffles me there's still people that don't believe in any of the stuff.
Yeah. They always just balk at it. That is a little frustrating. They could at least give it a shot.
Well, I encourage them to go see for themselves. It's an experience of a lifetime. I mean, seeing that Squatch, I mean, even though I was a firm believer in a lot of these things that we don't know firsthand, but there's nothing like actually being in there and being in its presence, the way seems like the entire environment changes when they're around. You mentioned the trail cams. Like, a lot of people think that they can see the infrared beam that these trail cams emit. I'd even go as far as to say that atmosphere that these Sasquatch and Dogman or whatever have, like, maybe that's their natural magnetic field. Maybe they're picking up on any kind of electronic instruments that we bring out there. I don't know. But that's why, I keep going back.
Well, it's gotta be something like that, right? Why is there no good evidence? And that's one thing I jotted down, is why to this day, and everyone gets sick of me saying this, there has to be, unless it's, Sparta and they're tossing these, I mean, I'm sure not all of these Sasquatch and Dogmen are born, as sharp as the next one, right? Right. I was like, why couldn't there be just one after all this time to mess it up for the rest? That gets hit by a car or shot by a hunter or in a trap or whatever it might be. So why do you think right now, at this moment, we don't have a body or any parts or pieces of these guys to prove them through DNA?
Well, there you go. I mean, as far as, John Doe public, we don't know a thing about these creatures. Me going in every day, with everything I've learned, I don't really know why some of these things happen. I've seen one, from the torso up. I had the camera on it, and brand new HD 1080, whatever. And it starts going static. It starts pixelating.
Oh.
Why is that? And that's why, as the bigger the channel gets, the more people become interested in the subject. And that's why I get people from the narration community, which, for whatever reason, I have a bigger rapport with them than people from the cryptid community.
I'm sorry, you said what community?
The narration community.
Oh, okay.
The younger kids that do these, like, I call them kids. A lot of them are my age, but,
right.
They do the creepy stories and all that kind of stuff. I got them to narrate these true encounters. There's a lot of, fear mongering with it. And it's almost like a money making market, which is fine, I guess, but I don't want to give anybody any kind of misinformation. So, in all those, they're encounters, they're sightings. Put some creepy music behind it and,
right.
Somebody with a scary sounding voice. You take all that stuff away, you're listening to a sighting. So, I really want to encourage people we all inhabit this world. We should all have some sort of understanding of what's out there. But, there's something else going on with these creatures, maybe. I don't know. I think that it can be scientifically or reasonably explained. It's just there's not enough people who are sharing notes and communicating amongst themselves. Everybody sits on their own island with their own information, thinking it's somehow something to covet.
All the experts.
Yeah,
right?
Yes, ma'am.
All the experts writing their books.
And, it's crazy when I talk to people who've been doing it 40 or 50 years and say they've seen them 2 or 3 times over the course of that time. Mm-hmm. Like, 8 out of 10 times, I'm either seeing something definitive or hearing something definitive that can't be attributed to anything natural. And that makes me think as well. I don't know. I know I'm not giving you a definitive answer on your question. But
no, that's okay. I mean, there are none.
I don't know.
Right?
Yeah, I don't know that there are any. I'm sure that some facets of the government, not to be Johnny conspiracy theorist, but somebody knows what's going on with these things. You're right. Like, they make mistakes. Truly. Why hasn't one stumbled in front of a trail cam, or the adolescents who have to, I think, be taught this natural elusive nature? Why hasn't one of them accidentally ran out on the freeway?
Right. I say it over and over. I know listeners are like, oh my God, here she goes again with her, the Sasquatch with Down syndrome. I mean, I'm not making fun. I mean that. Maybe they do dispatch them.
I would think so.
It has to be part, of their natural world.
I've talked to a guy who said the same thing.
Yeah.
If I believe it's like you said Sparta earlier, that makes a lot of sense. I think if there's any kind of weakness or deficiency, that maybe not for the individual's sake, but for the sake of the entire troop or tribe or whatever anybody wants to call it, I think that they would get rid of that, because this is a tight-knit, almost a symbiotic relationship with one another. I've seen this massive nest. It was a down tree, and it looked like they took just a bunch of bramble bushes and other trees and threw on top of it. I've gone there in the middle of the day and seen these things piled on top of each other. Now, they're not smarter than us. I don't believe in that concept whatsoever. Their cognitive level of thinking's high, but they're not us. These things, it looked like a big shadow, but you could see their eye shine. And the way I described it is it looked like they were swimming on top of each other. It was so fluid the way they were all moving together to not break up their outline whatsoever. So I think if one didn't have that level of cognitive thinking, I guess is a good way of putting it, I don't think that they would allow it to put the rest at jeopardy. Right.
There's a lot at stake there, I think, for them.
Absolutely.
Well, I know for them, because that's what they're based on is staying elusive and out of our sight. You know what? I can't blame them. I mean, look at what we do.
First written sighting was in 986 AD by Leif Erikson, and still there are people who don't believe that two presidents actually of the United States mention these creatures. But still, they're the vast majority of people,
we're kooks.
Yeah, absolutely. Doesn't matter what kind of degrees we have or where we are in society. If we believe we're nuts.
Right. And that's the ultimate conundrum, is those that have degrees, if they are interested in this, there is a very select few who will put that degree in jeopardy to even bring the subject up, that they're even reading a book about it.
Which is sad.
It is sad.
Because there's a lot of bright minds out there that I want somebody, me, you, anybody who's interested in the subject, one of these independent researchers, to be the one to say, aha, I've broke the code, and bring this thing out to the public. I don't want Big Brother to hold our hand and say, okay, we've been good citizens, so we're going to let you in on a secret.
See, it's tough though, Dee, because what about the PG film? If you believe that's a real Sasquatch, it doesn't get much better than that, and that's still hotly debated to this day. So me personally, and I'm not one for really, hey, let's go out and shoot one. But on the other hand, I'm like, there's no other way that we're going to prove this to anybody with a picture or a video. Even though they're compelling and they're like, holy smoke, what is that? I don't know.
And that's another reason why I religiously go back to the same area and make my presence known, to the point where they are acknowledging me by a whistle that I give them, I think that, somebody with good equipment who's doing the same thing, going to a hot spot, and building up some sort of rapport to where these things get comfortable enough not to change their own natural habits because of this outside interference.
Yeah.
If somebody can do that and they have like some sort of just badass FLIR or night vision, you could get like the Dark Knight linked footage of something amazing. I don't think that could be deniable, but you're right. In essence, if I think President Trump himself would have to dissect the body during Super Bowl halftime for most people to leave it, even if we did have a body. You know what I mean?
Even then, they'll say it's a conspiracy.
A conspiracy.
To get ratings.
Exactly. So, I mean, maybe one day we'll, I think if we have disclosure, it's going to be happening sooner than later, for the simple fact, and I don't, keep a lot of notes. I do there are a lot of people who take a camera and ramble through, the woods and call themselves researchers. Like, I take it very seriously, that portion of it. And, I can't say across the entire United States of America, but I do believe, at least down here on the Red River Basin, there's a population boom. A lot of people attribute the big number of sightings to, there's more people with, communicate cell phones, this, that, and the other thing. I don't think that's it. I think that these things are experiencing some sort of population boom.
Well, that's a good thing. I really do want one. Just one, just to screw it up. But then again, I'm like, what's going to happen after then?
Well, just on national news the other night, there was some sort of car wreck, I believe, in, I may be wrong on this, in Ohio. And both participants of this wreck said that, they saw a Sasquatch. That's what caused the wreck.
Oh, yeah. Now wait, was that the one from like last month, or this was very recently?
It may have been last month.
Okay, I think I did see that.
And I mean, that's pretty phenomenal in and of itself, you know. Most times if the news is covering any kind of sighting or activity or anything like that, it's, you know, they're laughing as it's the whole subject, as you said, is made a mockery of. Mm-hmm. It's not taken seriously by mainstream media or, really anybody except the people who have either had encounters or sightings, or the people that are interested in it.
Yeah, it's always like to close the news show to get a few Snickers, so it's a lighthearted end to the newscast. It's frustrating.
Exactly, very. Because I mean, these things, I don't think there's a ton of violent encounters, but they do happen. You know, so I don't think it's anything to be mocked or to have a cynical attitude about.
See, and that's an interesting point that you made. If there is a population boom in both, let's just assume it's Sasquatch and Dogman, and going back to your encounter with the Dogman, which is chilling, by the way. It's besides you whistling My Three Sons, I think that's my favorite part of the interview so far is hearing you retell the Dogman encounter. But if we are assuming that the population is growing for both of these, well, guess what? The humans are encroaching more on their land as well. So there has to be some kind of a climax there with contact. There has to be at some point if that keeps going.
I believe so. And what you said is something I discussed with another researcher. One of these, there's going to be an incident. There's no doubt in my mind where a lot of people are going to see one of these things, whether it be an adolescent trying to follow an adult running across a freeway. There's going to be something, and it's going to be filmed by a lot of different, you know, unassociated parties. I believe, or, you know, that's just an example, but
right.
I do believe that one of them is going to make a critical mistake, and a lot of people are going to be there to witness it. Like, what happens then? With the population boom, more people are moving out, you know, for a while people were moving into the rural, regions, the country. A lot of people now are going back to the cities, you know, and I don't think people realize just how much land is in the United States of America that hasn't been surveyed by foot.
Right.
Most of the population, by this last election, if you look at the map, most of the populations are in these big, you know, metropolises, these big, cities. I don't know. I could see a population boom happening. The hog population here in North Texas and Southern Oklahoma is an epidemic. The state's bringing out helicopters on private land and, you know, shooting them from the helicopters. And it's to the point now where they're putting out poison. That's a natural and readily available food source. And, it's like that all over the United States. There's, which I've never heard of before, but an epidemic of deer, like in the Northeast. You know, and going down the coastline. So with that natural food source, I could see how a natural predator, a top tier apex predator could thrive and survive and flourish. Absolutely.
See, at least the Northeast has deer and you guys have these aggressive hogs. So, okay, so I'm going to poke at you a little bit because, Chad messaged me earlier today.
No,
and yeah, you know where this is going, huh? Yes. So yeah, he said that you guys went out squatching. Those are his words in Brown Springs, and that I guess there was an incident with an old angry sow, and you ended up cussing out a bunch of wild pigs in the middle of the night.
Yeah, that was the night we brought the bacon. After we heard the My Three Sons whistling, I mean, they were really, really close to us. I said, you know, let's pull back. And we went back behind what I call the threshold. It's where the only place where you'll find human trash, or the only place we go. We as in, you know, people who are normal, not me. But, I went back to the vehicle to get, I think, a flashlight or something. And, he bought me these bionic ears. And they're so comfortable that sometimes you forget you have them on. And, I heard this sow, sound off, and I knew she had piglets just by the way she sounded. And I gave her a good cussing because I thought my calf muscle was gone. I didn't realize, that it wasn't as close as it sounded since I had those years on Chad. Mr. Yeti Spook himself.
I figured that, when you mentioned that name earlier, I thought, I bet that's Chad he's talking about that messaged me about the sow that you end up cussing out. See, people don't realize, if you haven't watched, just go watch the movie, I think it's Hannibal. When pigs, will eat you. If they are angry, they have no problem ripping an entire piece of your muscle off. That's why you mentioned, I'm worried about my calf muscles. That's awesome.
Oh yeah, I mean, it sounded so close that
right.
I'm not going to say exactly what I said, but I could hear him like yelling for me, like, "Are you all right?" And I was like, "Yeah." That's fun. I've been treed in that area because I don't take a firearm.
You don't ever take a firearm?
No, not once, never.
So is that part of your thinking that the Sasquatch will know that you are carrying a firearm and thus they will not come as close to you?
Well, if we go to the BFRO and look, 90% of what's considered to be violent because it scared somebody, that's a whole nother conversation, but most of these incidents where people are ran out of the woods are hunters. I do believe that they know exactly what firearms are, whether they can smell the gun oil, the gunpowder. At any rate, I was going to leave myself completely vulnerable. I'm pretty sure that they've never seen anybody, especially in there, without a firearm. And, sure enough, it piqued their curiosity enough to get close and see what's going on with me.
Well, so far it seems to have worked quite well.
I can approach their nest without, being ripped to shreds, so.
They're like, he carries no boomstick, so we're good.
Exactly.
Yeah. So,
and, I catch hell for that from a lot of people.
Right. Well, there's a lot of other things besides the Sasquatch that are scary, including the big, massive, I don't know how big they get there, but some of these guys get 800 pounds, those pigs.
Absolutely right. And like I said, it was nowhere near where the activity is thick in the area. It was actually on the way in, but, it was just a little troop, family of pigs running through, and, they treed me. Or, they didn't tree me. I made my way. I shimmied up a tree before, they could.
So once you get up the tree, do they stay down there and snort and wait for you to come down, or they just?
Yeah, they trample around, snort, and then they go on about their business.
But if you cuss at them, will they leave? I would have done the same thing. Don't even worry about that. I'm a trucker when I need to be. No problem.
And just thinking that how close I thought it was, not thinking I had the binoculars on. It sounded like it was right behind me. Yeah. And I just accepted what was. And
no, man, that's some scary stuff. Honest to God, if people think it's so, these aren't these cute little Babe Pig in the City little piglets.
No,
these are, they will mess you up big time. And heaven forbid there's more than one. You don't have a chance.
Yeah, and especially if there's little piglets around.
Right. Angry mama? Mm-mm.
I don't want no part. I'll take the Squatch. Because people don't realize that you're not going to find, if you're going into what they call a hot spot, you're not going to find these other creatures around.
Right.
Because they have sense enough not to go in there.
So when you're going into these areas that you call your hot spots, you don't ever have to worry about hogs.
No, well, to a certain extent. I've never really worried about anything in there. Aside from, the hairy scaries.
Right.
And even going into my area, I don't worry about them anymore. It's still dawning and, it's anxiety filled, but, I have a situation that happened that you may enjoy. There was this gentleman who came down. He plastered his number all over the comment section of the channel. And, he said he was from the Brown Springs area. He's gone in those woods his entire life, this, that, and the other thing. And I was like, okay. I better call this guy because I don't want somebody to find this number and prank calling him. And when I called him, he was actually down there. And remember I told you the cemetery is, what most people think Brown Springs is. Mm-hmm. He didn't know exactly where I was going. So I met him down there. He was already there for whatever reason. And, we began talking. I kind of liked what he had to say. He had the right mind about it. He was talking about if these creatures are here, they need to be protected, which I don't believe in at all. They don't need anything from us. They're doing fine by themselves. I take him to the area and before we even get in there, 60 yards, we hit the trail. It was him, his stepdaughter, her boyfriend, and his brother.
Mm.
We hit the trail and the daughter kind of shrieks a little bit and she says, there's one right there. And there were actually two of them about 60 yards away. This is it during fall when all the leaves or most of them, falling. It was thick still, but it was open. You could see fairly well.
And this is in the morning, like bright daylight?
Late evening.
Okay. Oh.
Going into dusk. There was one laying on its side with propped up on its arm, staring straight at us. And there was one just standing straight up. They're both black. I think they were, older adolescents. But this guy was like, no, that could be a tree. And he pointed at him. I was like, put your hand down. Stop pointing. After that point, I wasn't going to take him there. There was no way. And I just kind of let him ramble around and kind of look at stuff by the vehicles. And I pointed out, this is a nest. This is these deer blinds. There was no reason for this vegetation to be here in between these two trees because of this, that, and the other thing. And he was arguing back and forth with me, subtly, passive aggressive stuff. And, the sun's going down the entire time. We actually sit there and there was what I call the sentries. They had moved in fairly close. Now, he had wandered off someplace, which I told him he shouldn't do, but he quote unquote knew the area and grew up there. Mm-hmm. Him and the boyfriend, his daughter's boyfriend, they went about 60 yards away where we had that site. And these other ones had moved on someplace. Cause, I brought them back to where the vehicles were after, he was pointing at them and whatnot. But the daughter, the brother, and myself saw one of the sentries, flash of fire going behind a tree. And I told them if we turn our backs, that we can hear that thing run off. And, they actually listened and we turned our backs and you could hear, the patter of its feet sprinting off into the deep brush. Well, the boyfriend and the dad, this gentleman who initially left his number on the channel, they came back to where we were. And he's still rambling on about, well, the floodwaters could have done this, that, and the other thing. By this time, I'm getting mad. That's the first and only time I've ever been upset in that entire area. And I told him, if you come back in here with me again, I guarantee you'll see something. As soon as I said that, the woods came alive. Hmm. You could hear them all rushing up to the tree line, because we're outside the tree line past that threshold I was talking about. And, we heard a wood knock. It sounded like King Kong hitting redwood with a baseball bat. And it was right in front of us, and it was the alpha female. She walked smooth across the trail right out in the open staring at that guy. And she got behind a tree. And this is the failing light of dusk, but you could see it. And she got behind a tree. He pulled out his flashlight. And I told him don't shine it on it. I waited until everything calmed down to us. And this was within the course of 2 minutes. I didn't know what was going to happen. They've never done that before. But he pulled out his flashlight and he had his hand over the light itself. And I told him okay. And he shined it up there. And yeah, two red eyes were staring back down at him. And they all looked at me and I said, what we're going to do, we're going to turn around casually, no running, get back in our vehicles, and we're going to slowly drop off.
So once you brought those folks in there, the next time that you went in by yourself, did they act differently towards you?
No, not at all. And, the only thing I can attribute that to is, the sheer amount of time I spent in that area and them being interested in me. I don't know, maybe they heard a different pitch and voice, but it was almost like they were coming to my aid. As crazy as that sounds. That was pretty scary, but it wasn't for me, So maybe they heard you kind of raising your voice to him, no, you kept having to, basically scold and kind of guide them as far as what to do. Maybe they picked up on that? I think so. And this female's massive. Yeah, you keep mentioning the alpha female, and that's not two words that usually go together. You usually hear alpha male. So, is there is there also an alpha male? I've only seen him one time. Okay. It was the only time I've been there. You mentioned the morning. It was, during the morning. Cause, it was about 4 months into it, going in every day. I kind of wanted to change things up and see how the activity changed. I went down the main road and there was a deer, a doe. She was running across, well, she wasn't running. She was just kind of hobbling across the road, Her, tongue was hanging out. You could see, the sweat on her coat. And I didn't even think about it at the time. I figured she was ran hard by a buck or whatever. I try to clear my mind out and get my game face on before I go into this area. And this is right at the turnoff to go into the main entrance. I drove down this dirt road leading into my area, and I looked to my left, and the sun's just not coming up. Things are dark. It's that kind of orange, purplish, like morning time look. But I see what I thought was the biggest tree in Oklahoma. And, I looked at it and I said, man, that's massive. I don't remember that.
Oh, God.
And I go down to this, I go down, I sit in the vehicle and I do what I normally do. Mm-hmm. Sit there for a minute, try to soak it in, see how close they are, how far away they are. And I couldn't take my mind away from this tree. So I back up. It's about 30, maybe 40 yards. I just back straight up because there's no trees that big in Oklahoma. And I look, and, the sun's come up at this point. It's daylight. And there standing was this thing, it was mad. I told you that that's the only other time that I've ever been scared. This thing was still standing in the exact same spot, and it was standing there for long enough for me to smoke a cigarette and still sit and think and ponder. Same spot. And I looked, and the only thing I didn't see was its face, thank God. Yeah, it was standing there in that field, like behind this.
You just thought it was a massive tree.
Yeah, that's all I saw.
And he hadn't budged after you smoked the cigarette and pondered.
Ma'am, he didn't move what looked like 1 inch. And you could see the dew on his coat, and it wasn't like some big, thick, furry coat. But even through that, you could see the definition in like his arms, like where he was so muscular, like, and it was weird. And I've had this explained to me by somebody. My mind wasn't geared to see that and accept it for reality, but we were staring at it like my vision was going, the only way I can describe it was going in and out. It would go from blurry to clear. The more detail I saw. I don't think my mom was wanting to accept what I was seeing, but yeah, it was just a big, massive, I was looking at power personified.
So what color is he and what color is he?
He was straight black, just jet black.
What about the alpha female? And is that then, are they together? Are they of the same family, you think?
I believe so. I believe that this is from what I studied of the area when I was getting into this, there was, accounts 500 years ago of these, I forget exactly what the Native American word was, but these creatures, they would, the Native Americans coming up from what was then Mexico would completely circumnavigate the entire area about miles just so they wouldn't have to go through that, branch of woods. So I do believe that they're a generational family pod. But I believe the alpha female is, it's like the old Southern African tribes or some of the Northwest Native American tribes. The matriarch was basically the boss, or like lions. Right. I believe she runs the day-to-day operations, and I believe he's basically a policeman. Right. I found where his habitat is, and it's right on the river, far away from the rest of them. And actually, I'm sorry.
Oh no, I'm sorry. So how far is he from the rest of them, do you think?
Where I found the natural, primitive structure was, a quarter mile away from where I've encountered a lot of the activity. So, I mean, it's not too far away. And actually, the searching for Bigfoot crew, came down because, they ramble across the United States. They take, these, witness encounters and whatnot. And they introduced me to the Texas side, just right across from the Oklahoma side. And that's their hunting grounds. And there's more tree breaks in that one area than I've seen in anybody's footage on any documentary. And it's, where the river horseshoes, it's, hunting land and a big farmland. And, this tree line, which isn't too deep, but, it looks like they just went in there and started tearing down trees, but all of them are pointed in the exact same direction. They actually ran a hunter out of there. He built the primitive tree fort, or they told me a deer stand. When I got in there and looked for myself, it was a tree fort. He found all this, thick wood, good sturdy wood, And he built them a tree fort out of baling wire and natural stuff that he found. He left about $1,000 worth of equipment in that thing.
Oh.
Yeah, found out after the fact when he was there 3 days. On the third day, he started actively hunting at night, and after I guess he went back into that tree fort, there was 3 of them. They came from either side, and this tree fort's about 9 feet up in the air. Mm-hmm. They said they were slapping the sides of it, and it was a 4-mile hike to get in there. Which,
my gosh, that's a long way to go if you're terrified. So did he run out in the middle of the night?
Yes, ma'am. And trees are down everywhere. I figured, I thought the worst, because there's no way you're going to sprint 4 miles. I don't care what's on you, and these things are big. But he actually took the river in there, and he will never go hunting again. He'll never go in the woods again.
No kidding.
Yeah, I hate that for him, though. Especially if you see this tree fort. It's on the channel, actually. This guy put a lot of time into that. He was a woodsman,
what video is that, Dee?
I
can link it for you.
The deer hunter on the hunting grounds.
Okay. I think I did see that. Yes. Okay. I'll make sure to link that. And do you mind if I pull out that very first still that I knew that you were talking about? That's the Dogman.
No, not at all.
Just as an image for the show notes so folks can find that. Well, okay, so Dee, what's the end game for you? All this time put in, and you guys have your special whistle, which I think is so cool. What's the end game for you here with all this research?
With all of it, the research, getting the narrators to do the accounts, I've been called the Crazy Crusader because I simply just want to show people the truth of this world. And that's, as simplistic as that sounds, that's really it. The most rewarding thing I've gotten from doing that channel is when people will email me and they tell me, I never believed in any of this stuff, but since, I started following you, I think back and, when I was in the woods, I would hear this and ignore it, but I'm pretty sure it was this. Or when some 18, 19-year-old kid says, I just went researching for the first time because you took the fear of it away from me. I mean, that's worth more than anything, any amount of money, that I could do that for an individual. But I guess the end game is just to continue in that same vein, bring more people, into the fray, heighten people's awareness of exactly what they could be dealing with and how to deal with, a situation if they find themselves in it in a way that wouldn't be violent or, aggressive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess, though, after hearing your Dogman encounter, probably most people would go nope. Although, I will say, as you know, I used to live in the Washington State area and Ohio, but I grew up here in Nevada, and I'm back here in the desert. It makes me miss the woods so much, hearing you talk about, being able just to drive out and go and do these sorts of things. I truly miss the woods. I would love to get out there to your area sometime.
More than welcome, anytime.
Thanks, Dee. Thank you. Well, let's let everyone know everywhere they can find you and how they can contact you.
Yes, ma'am. It's the Bigfoot Dogman Research Project on YouTube. If you have anything, you can email me at my personal email. It's ddos13@gmail.com. And I have a Twitter, but I'm kind of old school. Even though I'm 32, I could be 62. I think it's Dee Doss _BDRP. I have 88 followers now.
That's okay. I think that's I'm not good at Twitter. I'm like the very basic Twitter kind of a person, so don't worry. You're not alone there. Yeah.
Well, I was told I needed one if I was going to remain relevant.
Yeah, I was told that too. Now I know you have a Facebook. Do you want people to find you on Facebook or?
Sure. Yeah, it's just Dee Doss.
Okay. So I have to cut this one off here, but there was I have a whole nother side of my notes here that I didn't even get to. So guess what that means? We have to have you back for another episode because you talk about haunted areas and CERN. And I mean, yeah, your channel has a lot of cool stuff. So we'll have you back on for part 2. Okay.
Yes, ma'am. I sincerely appreciate that. I hope I didn't bore your listeners to death.
No, not at all. Yeah, this makes me want to just like drop everything and take like 2 weeks off and be like, okay, I'm off to northern Texas and southern Oklahoma. See ya.
And Chad will tell you. I mean, it's there's a lot of action going on down here.
You know what? Before we go, Dee, have you ever been down around the Sam Houston area? Not that you probably even need to go down there, but have you ever gone down there to do any research?
No, ma'am. I've been invited several different times, and according to Yeti Spook, I guess that's the next stop for me. So,
well, cool. I can attest. It was a cool place. There were some interesting signs. I never saw anything. You probably know that, but cool area. I have an uncle that's in the Dallas area of Texas.
Awesome.
And well, just outside of, and you know, it's very urban sprawl and brick houses, shopping malls, but I didn't realize that just outside of Houston was this, massive forest.
Oh, absolutely.
I had no idea till I went out there for this specific purpose of researching Bigfoot. So anyhow, very cool to hear that. I can vouch that Sam Houston has plenty of land, and we saw some pig sign. I never got to see one myself, which is a good thing, of course. You don't.
That's an absolute good thing. Yeah. That's a really good thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I hear. I hear there's a lot of violent encounters, though.
Yeah, they seem angry there. I don't know why. I mean, the weather seems, it's better than Florida, right? I was just laughing about that last time. I'm like, my God, I wouldn't want to be a Bigfoot in Florida.
Possibly
Too
different types.
humid. Yeah. That's what it seems like. They're super angry, almost like they may as well be a dogman or something. Just kind of in your face, right?
Yeah, everybody, the people who are doing field investigations that, I trust that aren't exaggerating or, big fish stories, they say that they're pretty ornery. Yeah.
That's the name of the game down there, from what it sounds like, is, they are very feisty. Well,
I'd still love to check it out.
Well, yeah, Dee, we'll have to get back on because I literally had another page and a half of notes, but we just didn't have time for it because we really delved into Bigfoot and Dogman, but that's okay because guess what?